Hello, today I'm going to introduce you to my HIR mapping tool, and I'm going to go into DNA Painter, and I'm going to show you one application for this. I'll look at a profile I've already created here for my cousin Richard and his son Daniel. There we go. And when I say for Richard and his son Daniel, it's actually Richard and his sons Daniel and Anti-Daniel, Daniel's paternal evil twin. The 23 chromosomes, each chromosome, typically when you're using DNA Painter, you put the paternal on top, maternal on the bottom. I mean, you don't do it, it assigns it for you that way. But instead, I am on the top bar for each chromosome, I am putting the Richard and Daniel, their shared DNA. And on the bottom, I'm putting Richard X Daniel, the DNA that he did not pass to Daniel. And then I'm representing Richard's parents, which are the grandparents of Daniel, in red and green. Green being Richard's mother, red being his father. So this is the reverse phasing technique because my toolkit, after you create a profile like this, can realign those segments. And rather than use a parent to phase an individual, you can use the child and create synthetic DNA kits for each of Richard's parents. And I've done that, and I'm not going to redo that. Instead, I'm going to do it for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my mother's and my DNA to create DNA for each of her DNA kits for each of her parents, and that should represent roughly 50% of each of her parents' DNA. Just as if we use the normal phasing method, but there's a couple extra steps. I've made a video on reverse phasing already, and I'm not going to go too crazy about how I use my tool and things like that. And I'm really going to focus on creating this diagram because that is the part of the process that I mostly left out before. And partially because I didn't want to go into making a video on something that was going to be obsolete because I was using Excel previously to do that, and now I've created a tool to automate much of that process, which I'm going to show you. So to get to the tool, I'm going to open up a new window here. It's a web-based tool, and some of my web-based tools require the creeper, require the desktop version of my software to be open. This one does not. It's purely a web-based tool, and anyone could use it to create DNA Painter profiles. So www.borlandgenetics.tools/hirmapper.html is the address. So this is not in any way affiliated with GEDmatch, but I do have a GEDmatch screen in the middle just to make life easier, so everything's all in one page and can be easily copy and pasted. Although we are going to create some separate tabs because I'm going to kind of go quickly. Here we go, logging in. So step 1, log in, done. Step 2, run to one-to-one compare between the two factory input kits to be phased. Here it's me and my mother, and paste the segment data into the top text box on the right. Okay, so let's run a one-to-one. I'm going to press Control while I hit it, so it opens it up in a different window. Okay, one-to-one entry form. Me versus my mother. You could leave graphics and positions because we're not using Excel anymore, so it's not going to screw that up. But what we do want to do, well, I'm going to show you what happens if you don't do it first. If I hit submit, there's no problem here. The problem is they're called hard breaks. Instead of having one matching segment as the graphic indicates across each bar, it's divided into 3, 2, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2 segments on each one, when in fact we share DNA across the whole thing. These are artificially split by GEDmatch in their new Genesis algorithm to avoid pileup areas or whatever, but that's not conducive to visual phasing. We want the entire chromosomes mapped, so I am going to go back, and whenever you're doing visual phasing or anything involving visual phasing or chromosome mapping, unless you're just trying to figure out the validity of a match, which is not the case here, there's no question You match on every chromosome. You want to turn off hard breaks. Okay, so now when we submit, we get what we expect. We see on each chromosome one long continuous match everywhere. The X isn't on here, and if I wanted to, I don't think the new GEDmatch has a X matching segment tool. So, and if it does, it only pulls it from your autosomal matches. It doesn't pull it from your nearest X matches, so it may not be too useful for this process. So let's just ignore the X for now, and we're going to reconstruct all the other chromosomes. We could always do the X manually later. Okay, so some keyboard shortcuts for you. Control A selects the entire screen, but we're not ready for that yet. Oh yeah, we are. Control A. Control C copies it to your clipboard. We go back to the form, and Control V pastes the clipboard into the text box once we click on that text box. Okay, we're on step 3. Run a one-to-one FIR compare between the two factory input kits to be phased, and paste the segment data into the text box on the center text box on the right. Skip if not applicable. Here it's not applicable. I'm not expecting to see any FIR segments between me and my mother because, to my knowledge, my parents were not related, and because FIR are mostly for siblings, full siblings, three-quarter siblings, things like that. Or you may have them in an endogamous population. If both of your parents are not related but belong to the same endogamous group, you may actually want to use that because it could get in the way of phasing in theory. I don't know if it will in practice. Okay, so anyway, it doesn't apply here. Step 4, run a segment search on the Borland Genetics phased output kit and paste the segment data on the bottom box on the right. So we're going to actually run this whole tool twice because I have 2 Borland Genetics phased output kits, and I prepared them in advance using the Ultimate Phaser in my toolkit, and one is my mother and me, and one is my mother X me, just like I explained with Richard and Daniel. Same analogous situation there. So let's do that. Let's do a segment search. Let's start with Kevin, my mother and me. Here we go. Copy the kit number, Control C. If you're on a Mac, all these things are the same thing. We use Command instead of Control for the keyboard shortcuts. Segment search. Now I'm going to hit Control when I click on it. That way it opens up a separate window. Now, increase the maximum kits to the maximum of 10,000 because we want all the information we can here. Some of these are going to be small segments. Some of these, especially with my particular ancestry being Eastern European, it's going to have very low match density. So I want all the data I can have here. SNP count I like to do for phase kits 505. I think that's a good balance. It doesn't go down and reduce the SNP count to the dynamic range of 200 to 400. It keeps these matches real, and at the same time, it's low enough with the 5 centimorgans that it's going to provide enough data, enough meaningful data to actually phase to assign phase to each segment that it creates by producing matches. Okay, so show the graphic bar. Before, when we did this in Excel, I would always click no because it really makes it annoying to paste the results of this into Excel if you leave the graphic bars on. But now we're doing it using my tool, and I've already programmed that into it. One thing to note here, though, don't click more than one. Oh, and this one you can't. I think you can on some of the other tools. But anyway, on any tool, if you're going to use with this HIR mapper tool, don't click more than one build. It's expecting a certain number of columns. Okay, submit. So I've got 1920 matches on my maternally phased kit. Each one of those black stars represents 10. Each one of the red stars, every 10 black ones, you get a red one instead, and that represents 100. There are 1,000 on each row of stars, and we're about to get into the second row. So 1920 is going to be about almost 2 full rows, so it's going to take a minute to load here. So this will be the first time I've ever used this HIR mapper tool for reverse phasing, or to prepare the diagram for reverse phasing. So hopefully all goes well. I've been doing it manually in Excel and then transferring it to DNA Painter up until now, and it's really a cumbersome process. One of my group members, Diego, came up with a nice Visual Basic program in Excel to make that a lot easier. This is an alternative method. Diego's works very well. I also recommend that. This has a little bit broader application, though. I didn't design this for reverse phasing, although it works very nicely with that. Okay, so Control A, that selects the entire screen. Remember, if you're on a Mac, that would be Command A, I believe. Okay, then Control C copies it onto my clipboard, and you won't see anything happen there until we go back into here, bottom right, and I'm going to hit Control V, keyboard shortcut to paste it into that box. And if I scroll up, you'd see the whole thing's there. In terrible formatting, but that's okay because my program knows what to do with that. So, step 5, click the bottom right button, continue. Problem with my mouse here. Let me try that again. Okay. You did not paste FIR data into the second input box. We got a little alert at the top. Tool will assume there are no FIR segments. And as that should be a good assumption here. My parents aren't related, and this is not a sibling. Okay. Okay, so it's going to show me it's going to identify some close relatives that I may want to exclude depending on which workflow I'm using this for. And since we're trying to determine whether a segment belongs to my mother's father's side or mother's side, her full sister is not going to be helpful because she is both a paternal and maternal relative. So we want to exclude this from our calculation. Also, I've already reconstructed my mother's parents, Joseph and Margaret. So if I included those that would be cheating. So I don't want to do that. Okay, so for all the other ones, let's put step 6, mark close relatives for exclusion, or assign them to a known ancestor group. And I'm going to create an ancestor group called maternal for Eva here, because she's on my mother's maternal Lithuanian side. Maternal. Felix is maternal. Mother's Polish side. Peter, maternal. Clara, paternal, on my mother's Lemko side. Frank, paternal, my mother's Polish side. I have absolutely no idea who John is, so we'll just let that go. Continue. Okay, select whether you want to split the HIR blocks into segments. Splitting into segments is recommended for ordinary mono-segment extraction, but not recommended in conjunction with the phased pseudo-sibling method. I'll get into the details of that at some point, but we are not doing the phased pseudo-sibling method here. This is a parent-child, and therefore it is appropriate to split these segments. We are not doing entire blocks at a time between siblings. So let's split. Step 8, download segment export. All right, you're almost there. There's my motivational picture for you. Okay, steps 9 through 15 show you what to do in DNA Painter, and that's really going to be the heart of this video, so I'm not going to read them to you. I'm going to show you. At least I'm going to show you as much as I can in the short amount of time we have. Okay, so going back to DNA Painter, I have created a blank profile. And by the way, that thing at the bottom, the export, the CSV that was exported from my tool, just ends up in your downloads folder unless you have it mapped elsewhere. I've created a blank profile here. Kevin, maternal reverse phasing. Nice clean slate here. I marked it as build 37 in the description field because it's always important to keep track of that. Never mix and match. My new version 3.0, when it comes out, will be able to convert for you, but you can't convert something if half of your chart is in centimeters and half of it is in inches. You got to be consistent, and then if you want to convert it, you can convert it only if it's only if you have a consistent piece to convert. Okay, so we're not going to paint a new match. We're going to use a subscription tool in DNA Painter, which is really important. Go to Settings, Import Data. And we're going to import the CSV in its entirety, and we want to be oblivious to the fact of what the centimorgan ranges are for each segment. And you may say for a second here, well, why don't we just do 5? We know that's the smallest for any segment. Well, my tool actually creates segments between the segments too. It actually makes segments for blank segments, for segments that have no matches. So who knows how big they're going to be, but we want to map the entire chromosome. We don't want to be missing any segments, so we're going to make it 0, 0. And we know even my mother's sister was excluded from this, so we don't need, you know, we don't have to change the 1800 centimorgans to anything else. We don't have any matches that big, I don't think. Okay, import. Choose the file before you import, and there it is, my HIR mapper export. Right in the downloads folder, which is where it usually looks for things when you import things. Okay, import the file. You're going to get a bunch of blue bars. First thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to edit this. I'm going to edit this group, and since this is me and my mother, not my mother X me, this is not my anti-self, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the top row, and the way I do that is by selecting side paternal. And I'm also going to write something different here. Checklist segments, these means the ones I'm not done yet, Kevin contrib, because I'm also going to have anti-Kevin ones. And when we import the second spreadsheet, when I run it again, it's going to have a different name. I know because I just accidentally made the wrong decision and kept them the same name. Well, I'll show you what I mean, and I had to start over. So it doesn't matter what you pick here, it's a known ancestor or not. It's not relevant for this particular workflow. Okay, so what happens here when you do that? The legend entry changes to something unique and different from the name of the tool, important. Otherwise, you will end up importing your segments, and it'll merge the Kevin and the anti-Kevin segments, which defeats the entire purpose of this exercise. And I assign them to paternal, so it shows up on the top bar. And remember, this has no bearing on whether or not they're actually paternal or maternal to my mother. And first of all, they're all maternal to me. It's just I want my maternally phased stuff on the top, and I want anti-Kevin's maternally phased on the bottom. Okay, so let's go back and run the tool. Actually, let's get started. Let's look through some of these first. I'm going to show you the process generally, then we can start going through. Just pick random segments. Okay. See, it says paternal in there. Why does it say paternal? Because some of those that I had marked paternal. It's a special paternal, and that means that on that screen in the HIR mapper tool, when I said somebody was paternal, that person matched me here. So I know I don't have a group yet, but I'm going to create a new group. I'm going to call it Joseph, which is my mother's father, Kevin contribution. Okay, and I'll let it randomly assign a group color. Okay, new group side, again, want to make sure it's paternal, so that way it shows up on the top. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's paternal to my mother, just that we want it on the top bar in each chromosome. Save segment. So let's go through a few more. I don't know who that is. Paternal. Okay. Oops, the wrong button here. Edit match. What I do is edit segment for each of these. Do I see anything on there? No. Oh yeah, special maternal. So I'm going to, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new group, and I'm going to call it Margaret, my mother's mother. Kevin contrib, let it assign the color, and even though it's my mother's mother, I'm putting it as paternal because I want it to show up on the top bar. Save segment. We got here, no idea. This one here, no one on the segment. This one here, paternal. Okay, this one here, maternal. And I'm just reading what the tool put in the box. This one here, it says paternal. So, I mean, we didn't do the whole chromosome because we got some gaps, but I mean, we pretty much sped through that. You know, paternal. Maybe I should have called this episode Speed Painting. Okay. Paternal. No idea who that was, but now I know it's paternal. Paternal. And I'm not going to do every segment here also. but since I didn't look at that one, I am going to try to do that one. Maybe I'll do 2 chromosomes. Paternal. This one sure has a lot of paternal on it. Paternal. And nothing. So, did I do the first one? There's nobody there anyway. Okay, so now when you look at this, see this segment here? The one that's sandwiched between 2 paternals? Guess what that's going to be? Even if it has no matches, what are the odds of 2 recombination points within 300 megabase pairs? 1 in 500 maybe? I don't know. So that's just off the top of my head. There's no way that's paternal. It has to be paternal. And we could do the same thing with this little one here. Let's make that paternal as well. So I'm going to pick some different colors here actually, because I am having trouble seeing these colors apart. And I want to make sure I can see what I'm doing. Edit group, change color, make it red. I can see red very easily. And all right, there we go. 2 colors that are really easy to tell apart. One is dark and one is light. Okay, so now let's go back to my tool. I'm going to hit enter, log back in. Okay, and this time I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to do it for the anti-Kevin, my evil twin, my maternal evil twin. So it's going to match my mother at all the same places. It's going to match her everywhere. So I'm just going to recopy the one-to-one data into the top box. There's not going to be anything different about that. FIR is still NA, not applicable. Except this time I'm going to go back on the segment search, and instead of doing me and my mother, I'm going to go to my mother but not me. And that is, I've already created this kit in the Ultimate Phaser tool in my toolkit. And here we go. Same settings. Only 1110 matches. Should only take a minute here. It's already about halfway done generating. Okay, that looks like it. All right. Now it's done loading. I'm going to hit Control A, copy, Control C, go to my tool, to the bottom, Control V. Continue. Okay. Okay, my brother is not going to be helpful with this either because he's also, like my mother's sister, related to my mother on both my mother's paternal and maternal side, presumably. Okay, so we're going to get rid of both of those, and again, we're going to get rid of Joseph and Margaret's reconstructed kits. Label the rest to make it easy. Paternal for Clara. Paternal. Jill is paternal. Felix, paternal. Slava is paternal. Eva, maternal. Paula, maternal. Carol, paternal. Peter, maternal. Peter, maternal. Oops. His name's Pete, but he's not paternal. He's maternal. Frank, paternal. And this one, I don't know why it's duplicating so many. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but it's okay. No idea who Gumby is. Continue. All right, select whether you wish to split them into segments. Same deal, split. Download segment export. And let's download now. Same thing, because it's going to have a 1 on the end of the title. If we opened it up, if we showed it in the folder, we'll be able to tell them apart because that has a little 1 in parentheses. It's always going to give it the same name, but you can always rename it, but you don't even need to because we're just going to go right in and import it. So settings, same profile, import data. Note that I changed the name of the original group. Otherwise, it would import it right on top of it into the same legend entry. We don't want that. Remember, I changed the HIR segment, whatever it said for the blue ones, I changed it to checklist segments. If I didn't do that, I would have problems at this step. And there's no undo, and I have to start over. Even though I haven't gotten very far, it's still okay. So now, exclude segments under 0. So it includes everything. Choose the file. HIR mapper 1, that's the copy, import. Now, it looks like it put it on top of those, but that's just because I have not designated this group as maternal yet. And maternal just means I'm putting it on the bottom row, and I'm going to call this checklist segments X Kevin contrib. Okay, and that's how I'm going to tell them apart. And that's going to put everything on the bottom. And that worked. And same thing when I create Margaret and Joseph's for these, I'm going to call them Margaret X Kevin contrib, Joseph X Kevin contrib. When I'm all the way done, I'm going to have to switch that so my tool recognizes them properly. But it would be a nightmare not to do it while I'm working, to have them call the same thing. Okay, so let's go to chromosome 2, same chromosome. This time we're working on the anti-Kevin side. Let's just take a look at here. There's no matches on this group, but look at the top. The top one at the same segment, Kevin has, what was this? This is Joseph. So anti-Kevin, by definition, has to have Margaret. So let's create a group. We're going to call it Margaret X Kevin contrib. And new group color. Sure, why not? Actually, what do we use for? We used red, right? Make it easier to tell. Choose. It's not important what color you use, but I have a hard time seeing colors. Okay. And what did I do wrong? I forgot. I had to edit the group, and I want to make that on the maternal side. But since they have distinct names, it's easy to go in and fix that. Okay. And now, what about these two up here on the original Kevin? Well, now I know they're Joseph, right? Because they're in the same spot anti-Kevin as Margaret. So even the segments with not a single match are really a breeze here, right? And look at that. What do you know? This stops. This is also a Joseph, right? I'm sorry. This is also to be colored red. That segment. Margaret X Kevin, what's the red one, right? So let's take a look at the next one. We say the word paternal in there. I recognize some of these from my Lemko group. So let's create a new group for Joseph X Kevin contrib. And I'm going to pick a color, by the way, I'm going to pick the top yellow because I want them to look the same. And I'm going to go back and make this Joseph that same yellow that I like to. Just for consistency, so I don't get all mixed up. Okay, so let's see what chromosome 2 is shaping out to be so far. We've got a reason there's a missing segment in there. That's kind of weird. Oh, I know why there's no missing segment. It's, again, the same mistake I made twice. Edit the group, make it maternal. For anything for anti-Kevin has to be maternal. And it's not missing. It was just hiding up in the top where it shouldn't have been. So you see a pattern starting to emerge where, okay. let's go this one here, no matches. This one here, maternal, Margaret X Kevin, save. This one here, paternal, Joseph X Kevin, contrib, save. Margaret X Kevin, save. And we know since the top is Joseph, this one has to also be Margaret, even if it has no matches. Save. So this top one, right, this one here, we know has to be red. Red, Margaret, Kevin contrib, because it's on the top. Okay, so there's one here where we don't know. They have, top has no matches. Bottom has no matches. So that's a segment that I really can't assign, and that's going to happen sometimes. But aside from that, I mean, things are looking pretty good on this chromosome. We went through that pretty quickly. Let's do chromosome 3 as well. I'm just going to do 2 chromosomes. A lot of segments on that, on the anti-Kevin. Maternal. And that's that. Next one. No matches. Next one. I think I knew who that is, but oops. Paternal. Don't know. Whoops. Keep clicking on that by accident. Paternal. This one here. No matches. Don't know. Don't know. And some of these, if I expand, they might actually have more information. And anyway, some of them I'm going to be able to tell that one's paternal. Now I'm going to compare them side by side. Okay. So, look at that. That one's, there's a recombination there. And that one got to be Margaret. This one here on the top is Joseph. So I think you'll see a pattern here. My Lithuanian side has really low match density, so it's a lot more often I'm going to be able to tell if someone's on my Lemko side than on my Lithuanian side. So that's going to be Margaret X Kevin. Likewise, Margaret X Kevin. Edit. Margaret X Kevin. Little one here. Okay, and I used to do a very similar process in Excel, but it just take a lot longer. This is Margaret Kevin. And this one here we know is Margaret Kevin. Oh, so we know this one here is Joseph X Kevin. That was a long one on the top. Okay, and then we know this one is Margaret X Kevin. And I'm not timing myself here, but as you can see, this is going very, very quickly. So if you've tested close relatives, you can phase your data even if you have no parents living. And not only that, you could do it really easy at this point and really quickly. There we go. There's 2 chromosomes done. And like I said, there's one gap. There may be segments missing here and there, but that's okay. My reverse phasing tool, if you got a segment missing, you got a segment missing, it'll handle it. I mean, it'll just leave it blank and insert some white noise there, but it'll function properly on GEDmatch, just as if you had done the whole thing. But anyway, so then what you would do after this, obviously you do the rest of the chromosomes. You might have to do the X manually, and I might do a separate video on that at some point, although that's very tedious. But you just go through and do chromosomes 1 through 22, and then you would use my reverse phasing tool. Before you use my reverse phasing tool, though, what you need to do is for each of these, now that they are, you don't do this for the checklist segments because, and let me put them on the bottom. I'm going to put these in an order so I know what's going on here. Joseph, Kevin. So I could still identify what they are because I'm going to change this one. When I'm ready to use the reverse phasing tool in my toolkit, I got to get rid of that X because it's looking for legend entries of 2 ancestors, not 4. But you do that when you're done. And I'm pretending I'm done here because I don't feel like doing the other 21 chromosomes or 20 on the camera. And now you see, since that's on the top, I'm just going to show you what would happen here now that they have the same name. If I did want to not switch them back and forth with the legend entry names, pick one here. Pick one that I know. This is a nice big one. Paternal. Okay, so I'm going to edit segment. Well, I know it's Joseph, and it's on the bottom, so I'm going to pick the Joseph that's on the bottom. So that's how you make a diagram like this in DNA Painter for my reverse phasing tool using the HIR mapper tool that I just came out with a couple weeks ago. I didn't have time to make too much proper videos on it yet because I had a birthday and a vacation since I created this tool, and I've been a little behind on making videos. But like I said, there are other applications for this HIR mapper tool, but the reverse phasing is an important application of it. It's also used for extracting segments tool, and it's also an important part of the phased pseudo-sibling tool. It automated a lot of the visual phasing process. So if you're going to be visual phasing, and you're going to, or chromosome mapping, and you want to create your ancestors and actually create DNA kits for them, this HIR mapper tool is going to really save you a lot of headache in doing so. Not only because it groups the cousin matches on meaningful segments, on actual segments determined by recombination points, as opposed to where you happen to match a specific cousin. That's one plus, and the other plus is that you have the ability to automatically put in a special match, to replace a match that with the word paternal or maternal or an ancestor's name if you want. If you're using this for the extract segments tool, and you may want to have ancestors beyond the parent level, you may be reconstructing great grandparents. Well, when you could just put the great grandparent name in there on the special screen in the HIR mapper tool. Okay, well, I know that might be a little confusing and it's a lot to digest, but in reality, it will make what used to be a 3 to 4 hour process in Excel of taking creating one of these charts and then going through and tediously, painstakingly putting it into DNA Painter, or taking the Excel format and creating some kind of Excel form that you can import into DNA Painter. This tool does it for you, and I really think that DNA Painter is probably the best interface there is to visual phase at this point, at least in the general case, where you're not just doing siblings. Like here, we're doing grandparents based on mother and child. Okay. Well, my vacation's almost over, and I will see you next week back in Washington. Okay, bye.